Hi, I'm Anna, and welcome back to the D3 Audible cheat sheets, where we conclude with Alsace. Now, to really understand Alsace, you have to stop thinking about it as a simple white wine region and start thinking about it as a region where law and labels are used to protect diversity, not to iron it out. Everything in Alsace, from yields to Grand Cru rules to sweetness categories to bottle shape, exists to support a wide range of styles made from a small number of varieties, often by very small producers. Let's start with the basic appellation rules because this is where Alsace quietly reveals its priorities. Chaptalization is permitted in Alsace under EU rules, and because this is a northerly region, it is still used in cooler years. That already tells you something important. Alsace accepts that ripening is not guaranteed every year, and the law allows producers to manage that risk. What often surprises students is just how high the maximum yields are at basic Alsace AOC level. For white wines, maximum yields rise as high as 100 hectoliter per hectare for Pinot Blanc, 90 hectoliter per hectare for Riesling, and 80 hectoliter per hectare for Pinot Gris and Gewürztraminer. Those are generous limits, and they can, especially on fertile soils on the valley plain, produce wines with lower flavor concentration. But this is deliberate. Alsace AOC is designed to accommodate high volume, affordable wines, often sold domestically through supermarkets, while still allowing producers to step up in quality when sight and intent justify it. And that step up happens through geographical precision. If a wine carries the name of one of 13 permitted communes, maximum yields fall to 72 hectoliter per hectare. If a wine carries a lieux-dit, yields drop further to 68 hectoliter per hectare. Lower yields mean less vigor, more concentration, and clearer sight expression. And the law makes that trade off explicit. For Pinot Noir AOC, the maximum yield is lower again at 60 hectoliter per hectare, reflecting both the grape's lower tolerance for high yields and the ambition to raise quality for a variety that historically struggled in Alsace. At the top of the hierarchy sit the Grand Cru vineyards, where yields are capped at 55 hectoliter per hectare, and in some cases 50 hectoliter per hectare, as in Rangen. These tighter limits reinforce the idea that Grand Cru in Alsace is about intensity, structure, and aging potential, not volume. The Alsace Grand Cru category was introduced in 1975, relatively late by French standards, and from the beginning it was normally restricted to single variety wines made from the four so called noble varieties: Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Pinot Gris, and Muscat. There are 51 Grand Cru vineyards, and since 2011, each of them have been recognized as an individual appellation. That change is crucial. It allows each Grand Cru to adjust its own rules, lowering yields, refining permitted practices, or even allowing new grape varieties based on the character of the site itself. This flexibility matters because Alsace's Grand Cru system has long been controversial. Critics argued that some boundaries were too generous and that permitted yields were too high, diluting the prestige of the category. As a result, several prominent producers originally refused to use the Grand Cru designation, choosing instead to market wines by site name alone. What's significant is what's happened more recently. Producers such as Trimbach and Hugel, who once rejected the category, have now begun to embrace it. That shift signals growing confidence that the Grand Cru framework can now support serious, site expressive wines rather than undermine them. There are also important exceptions within the Grand Cru rules. A small number of vineyards are permitted to produce blends or to use Silvana. And from the 2022 vintage, Hengst and Kirchberg des Bar have been authorized to produce Pinot Noir Grand Cru wines. a clear acknowledgement of both climate change and the rising quality of Alsace Pinot Noir. Few regions cause more confusion in the exam than Alsace when it comes to sweet wines, and that's precisely why clarity matters here. Both Vendange Tardive and Sélection de Grains Nobles can be produced at Alsace AOC or Grand Cru level, and both can only be made from the four noble varieties. The key distinction is not marketing, it's law and grape condition. Vendange Tardive requires very high sugar levels at harvest, but it does not require botrytis, and it does not require the finished wine to be sweet. In practice, the minimum sugar levels are so high that if fermented dry, the wines would reach around 14 to 15% alcohol, resulting in powerful structured wines that may still taste dry due to acidity. Selection de Grand Noble is different. It must be made from botrytis affected grapes, and the finished wine must be sweet. The minimum sugar levels are even higher, producing wines of great richness, concentration, and aging potential. The distinction matters because it shows how Alsace defines style through grape conditions at harvest, not simply residual sugar in the glass. Alsace's wine business reflects its vineyard structure. The average holding is under 4.7 hectares, which means many growers are too small to vinify and market all of their wines independently. As a result, over 40% of sales go through cooperatives, and crucially, these cooperatives have a reputation for quality, not just scale. The domestic market dominates. 71% of Alsace wine is sold in France, and nearly half of that goes through supermarkets, reinforcing the importance of approachable, clearly labeled styles. The leading export markets are Belgium, the USA, and Germany. Every bottle of Alsace AOC wine must be sold in the traditional tall, thin flute bottle. This gives Alsace a strong visual identity on the shelf, but it can also cause confusion for consumers who associate the shape with German wines. A reminder again of Alsace's borderland identity. One of the most distinctive features of Alsace is the sheer number of bottlings produced by individual domains. Medium to large producers often release 20 to 35 different wines across multiple varieties, sweetness levels, and quality tiers. The same producer may bottle dry Riesling, off-dry Gewürztraminer, Vendange Tardive Pinot Gris, Sélection des Grains Nobles, Grand Cru wines, and Cremant, all in the same vintage. Because of this complexity, Alsace wines are rarely sold on the basis of individual cuvee names alone. Instead, they are sold on the overall reputation of the region and the producer, with trust playing a central role in consumer choice. So, as we close, Alsace does not succeed by simplifying itself. It succeeds by codifying differences through yields, site names, sweetness rules, and market structure, and then asking producers to be precise and honest within that framework. In the exam, Alsace rewards candidates who explain why the rules exist, not just what the rules are. Clarity over flourish, logic over mythology. That is exactly how this region wants to be understood. And that concludes our cheat sheets on Alsace. I do hope this helps with your prep, and I'll see you at the next episode.